Ara had always believed that old houses remembered the people who had died in them. Not in a poetic sense, she meant it literally, the way a sponge holds water. Her grandmother's house in Jong was exactly that kind of house. The walls were thick mud brick, the courtyard was cracked and leaning, and every room smelled faintly of camphor and something older, something that had no name in any language Zara had ever studied. She was 22 when she moved in. Her parents had migrated to Lahore years ago, leaving the house in the care of an elderly caretaker named Bashi Chacha, who swept the courtyard every morning and lit incense at dusk without being asked. When Zara arrived for her thesis research on rural architecture, Bashi Chacha looked at her the way people look at someone standing at the edge of a cliff without knowing it. "Bibi," he said on her very first evening, "don't sit in the northern room after sunset." She asked why. He looked at the northern room's closed door and then back at her, and something in his eyes was not quite fear, it was closer to apology. "Wo kamra busy hai," he said quietly. "That room is occupied." The first strange thing was the roses. Zara woke at 2 a.m. on her third night with the thick, overpowering scent of fresh roses filling her room, not the dry, dusty smell of old potpourri, but the wet, living fragrance of roses just cut from a garden. She sat up in bed and checked her phone. Outside, the June heat was brutal and dry. No roses grew in her grandmother's courtyard. No roses grew for several streets in any direction. She told herself it was a dream trailing into wakefulness. She went back to sleep. The next night, the same thing. And the night after. Always between 2 and 3 in the morning. Always intense and inexplicable, and gone by dawn as completely as if it had never existed. On the fourth morning, she mentioned it to Bashi Chacha while he swept the courtyard. He stopped sweeping. The broom went still in his hands. He did not look at her. "Note down your research," he said carefully. "Finish your thesis. Go back to Lahore." "Chacha, I'm asking about a smell." "I know what you're asking about," he said. And he picked up his broom and went inside. By the second week, the smell had acquired a companion. Tapping. 3 soft knocks, always on the northern wall of her bedroom, the wall shared with the room Bashi Chacha had warned her about. The tapping came at the same hour as the roses, and it was patient. Not urgent, not violent. Patient in the way of something that has been waiting a very long time and has learned that patience is the only currency that never runs out. Zara was a rational person. She had a degree in architecture from NCA, she read academic journals for pleasure, and she did not believe in ghosts. She told herself, mice in the walls, old wood contracting in the heat, the house settling on its foundations. These were all possible explanations. She was halfway through her third rationalization on the 9th night when the tapping stopped mid-sequence, and then clearly and deliberately knocked 4 times instead of 3. She had not made a sound. She had only been thinking, counting in her head. It had heard her counting and corrected her. Zara sat very still for a long time. Her grandmother's room had a tall, age-blackened mirror in the corner, its silver backing clouded at the edges so that her own reflection looked like it was surfacing from deep water. She avoided it at night without consciously deciding to. On the 12th night, she had gotten up for water and passed it in the dark hallway and stopped. There was a shape behind her reflection. Not a solid shape. Not a man standing in the corridor. It was more like a quality of the darkness in that part of the mirror, a density, a suggestion of form, the way a figure sometimes appears in cloud formations and then, once you see it, you cannot unsee it. It was tall. And it was looking at her reflection with an attention she could feel, the way sunlight on skin has temperature even when you cannot see the sun. She turned around very fast. The corridor was empty. When she looked back at the mirror, the space behind her reflection was only darkness again. But the smell of roses was absolutely overwhelming now, filling the entire hallway, warm and sweet and almost, this was the word that came to her and she could not push it away, affectionate. She made him sit down the next morning. She made tea and she put it in front of him and she said, "Tell me everything. I'm not leaving until you do." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Your grandmother knew. She always knew. She used to say that this house was chosen. He explained slowly, the way old people explain things they have rehearsed for years but never spoken, that in some houses built on old ground, houses where certain things have happened or certain prayers have been said or certain thresholds have been crossed, the boundaries between the world of humans and the world of jinn grow thin. Not broken. Thin like paper held up to a light. And jinn, like people, could look through paper held to a light. Could become curious. Could become attached. There is one, he said, who has been in this house longer than your grandmother was alive. He does not cause harm. He never has. But he is, Bashi Chacha searched for the word. Mutarasir. Affected. By the women of this family. Zara sat with her tea going cold. Affected how? Your grandmother's grandmother, they say, was very beautiful. Very pious. She used to recite Quran in the northern room every night after Isha. For years. He listened. That kind of listening changes something, they say, in a being that is made of fire. Bashi Chacha looked at his hands. And then she died. And he stayed. And every woman of this family who comes to this house, he stopped. He recognizes us, Zara said. Bashi Chacha nodded once. He is not malevolent. But he is present. And attention from a jinn, even gentle attention, Bibi, is not a small thing. It does not stay small. She should have left. She knew she should have left. She told herself she would leave in the morning, every night for 5 more nights, and every morning found a new reason to stay. A measurement still needed, a photograph not yet taken, a chapter of her thesis not yet drafted. She was lying to herself and she knew it. Something in the house had become necessary to her in a way she could not explain and refused to examine. On the 17th night, she heard the voice for the first time. She had been lying awake in the dark listening to the courtyard sounds, crickets, a distant dog, the slow creak of the wooden beam above the doorway when it came. Not from the northern room. From everywhere and nowhere, the way sound sometimes travels in old buildings with thick walls and strange acoustics. It was low and it was not a language she knew, and yet she understood it the way you understand the emotional register of a piece of music without knowing its theory. It was not threatening. It was not calling to her. It was narrating. As if the darkness itself were reading aloud from a book whose subject was Zara, her breathing, her stillness, the way she held her hands when she slept. She pulled her blanket to her chin and recited Ayatul Kursi under her breath 3 times, then a 4th, and the voice did not stop but it retreated, like a tide going out, the sound receding to some further distance, still present but no longer in the room with her. And then, faintly, like a sigh, the roses again. And silence. She made a mistake on the 19th night. She had been telling herself for days that it was not a mistake she was planning, that she was an architecture student, that the northern room was part of the house she was documenting, that she simply needed measurements and photographs for her thesis. All of this was technically true and completely dishonest. She opened the northern room's door at midnight. It was empty. Of course it was empty. It was a room like any other room, a charpoy with its rope gone slack, a tin trunk, a window with wooden shutters that hadn't been opened in years. Moonlight came through the gap in the shutters in a single thin bar and lay across the dusty floor like a blade. But the air in that room was different. It was cooler than the rest of the house, significantly unreasonably cooler, and the smell of roses was so intense here that it became something other than a smell. It was a pressure, an atmosphere. It was the olfactory equivalent of standing very close to someone. She stepped inside. The door closed behind her. Not slammed, eased shut gently with the quiet deliberateness of someone ensuring privacy. Zara turned. The door had no latch on the inside. She did not panic. She pressed her palm flat against the wood and said aloud clearly, Main Dana Nahi Chati. Muj Samaj Nahi Aya. Lekin Main Jana Chati Hoon. I don't want to be afraid. I don't understand. But I want to go. The temperature in the room dropped another degree. And then the roses intensified one final time, almost unbearably, and then faded completely and suddenly, like a candle blown out. And the door swung open. She walked out without looking back. She walked to Bashi Chacha's quarters and knocked until he woke. She sat in his small room with the light on until dawn. She said nothing about what had happened. He asked nothing. She packed the next morning. She was methodical and quick and did not let herself look at the northern room's closed door as she carried things to the car. When she was done, Bashi Chacha stood in the courtyard and watched her. "I'll come back for the measurements," she told him. "Maybe in winter." "Don't come back at night," he said. "I won't." She drove for 40 minutes before she realized the smell of roses was still with her, faintly, barely, like a memory of a smell rather than the smell itself. She rolled down all 4 windows and drove fast, and by the time she reached the motorway it was gone. Almost gone. She finished her thesis that October. It was well received. Her supervisor noted that her chapter on the psychological atmosphere of historic domestic architecture was unusually vivid, almost experimental, as if written from the inside. She did not explain why. She did not go back to Jong that winter. She did not go back the winter after either. She was not afraid, she told herself. She was simply busy. She was building her career. She had no particular reason to go. But sometimes in Lahore, in her clean modern apartment with its white walls and its reliable electricity and its complete absence of old ground or thin boundaries or patient darkness, sometimes between 2 and 3 in the morning, she would wake with her heart going too fast. And the room would smell faintly of roses. And she would lie very still and not move and not speak and recite what she knew to recite, and eventually it would pass. It always passed. She told herself that was a comfort.